And we're live. It is Talking Reds Live in association with NordVPN. I'm Josh Sexton, joined by Neil Atkinson and Rob Gutmann to look ahead to tonight's Newcastle game and get stuck into some other big talking points in the Liverpool world. Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this, as always. Neil, quotes from the manager that come out last night about Darwin Nunez. I'll go through them for anyone at home who's not quite caught them, including Rob Gutmann next to me. The manager says, first of all, I helped him by saying you can miss a chance. I wasn't only hard on him, but for the second time in a row, I wasn't happy with his work effort against Wolves and against Villa. I always try to be honest with my players and be honest as I can to you guys as well, where I always try to protect my players so I don't say he never worked hard. I know him differently. I know him at Villa at home where he made a 100-metre sprint and scored a goal. I know him when he came on against City at home and was pressing really aggressively and wins the ball back and we score. Yep. But I can't accept if a player doesn't give everything. That is clear. I can accept it once, but twice was a bit too much. That's why I addressed it. Not that I'm all of a sudden very angry with him. I don't mind that he missed a chance. I'd have loved him to score it, and I know he eventually will score. But if you miss a chance, you need to be fighting for the team. I'm not saying he didn't do that at all, but it wasn't the usual Darwin, the one that's loved by the fans. That is mainly because he always works so hard. I thought it was reassuring from the manager, really, in sort of all senses. Like there's a bit of reassurance for the fans there, there's a bit of toffee for the journalist in terms of a sort of juicy headline off the back of this as well, but there's also something for Darwin in that, and he notes it sort of earlier in the quote, or perhaps in a different question because it's come from the sort of behind closed doors bit with the journalists, that Darwin has worked so hard in training since, so it feels like at least this season there is a way back for Darwin, and then whatever the future holds after that is for the birds.
Yeah, genuinely, I mean, let's be clear about this. I've got, at the minute, June the 2nd, Liverpool pre and post June the 2nd are very different things. Yeah. Before June the 2nd, Liverpool come win the European Cup, and to do that, they're going to need everyone in the squad to be all in as much as humanly possible. What Liverpool looks like from June the 3rd, or if you want to be very specific around contracts even, and say July the 1st, that's a different question. And then you go from there and we reassess. So I think it's really important, as far as I'm concerned, with where we are in this season, that there's still clarity and the possibility of there being a role for Nunez to play. If we're really honest about it, Liverpool have done this season with 5 forward options because Chiesa just hasn't particularly counted as one. And Liverpool are where they are, which is last 16 of the Champions League, top of the Swiss system, and points clear at the top of the league. And Nunez has played his part in that. I've been talking this week about the 3 2-0s, the 2-0 against Brentford, the 2-0 against Bournemouth, and the 2-0 against City. 3 different types of wins, and 3 different types of wins that I would argue our rivals couldn't get. So, our main rivals being Arsenal at the moment, they would kill at the minute to have Darwin Nunez to start for them. They would love to have Nunez to start against Forest, and they don't have that. They didn't have Nunez to bring off the bench when they've been tight in games and late in games. We've had that option. So he is a net positive at the moment, however much he burns people's heads out, including the manager. And I think that's a really important point, but he's got to stay one. And if this all helps him stay one from this point, listen, I had a bit of sympathy for him against Wolves. I had a little sympathy for him against Villa. Against Wolves, I thought he came onto a bit of a mess of a team where it looked like the shape and structure just wasn't quite right.
And a mess of a game, really.
By that point, it become a mess of a game. But listen, if the manager says, no, it started at Wolves and it continued into Villa, then I'll go with the manager on that 100%. Yeah. And he was crap against Villa after he missed a chance. And also, it's worth saying, we've seen that before. Last season's Goodison derby, I thought he was good first half. He was one of Liverpool's better players when all around was falling apart. His second half performance at Goodison Park last season was a disgrace. Yeah. It was amongst the worst things I've ever seen a Liverpool player put in, because he misses a couple of chances first half, comes out and can't get his head back in the game. And basically, I haven't got room or time for that. I am all right with the misses. There'll be some people who aren't, and they'll be analysed to death and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, footballers are going to miss chances. So the end of the matter, as far as I'm concerned, is he's going to get picked for Liverpool between now and the end of the season. He's going to come off the bench for Liverpool between now and the end of the season. But he can't be a shit sub. And the definition of a shit sub is one that you bring on, and then 2 minutes after he's come on, or 5 minutes after he's come on, or 10 minutes after he's come on, you're thinking to yourself, wish I could take him off, because you just can't. You haven't got that option. You brought him on for a purpose. So I think that, I'm right behind the manager in it, but I'm also behind the idea that Nunez will have moments to contribute in the league, in Europe, between now and the end of the season. And we need the best possible one, because if we get that, we've got more chance of being successful.
Yeah, Rob's right, Neil. We do need the best possible one until that.
Neil's right, Rob.
Neil's right, Rob.
Rob's right, Neil.
Rob's right, Neil. Rob's right, Neil, as well.
Tell him, Josh.
In advance, he's right.
I'm sure he will be, whatever he says.
The black jumpers, you communicate telepathically.
Yeah, you didn't get the memo today, Neil, unfortunately. But there is that sort of, pre and post June 2nd, and pre June 2nd, we are going to need everything we can get from Darwin Nunez, whatever that is, every sort of drop that we can get out of him. If you try and imagine sort of after June 2nd, do we think that the writing is on the wall for him for a move in the summer.
He just
Speaking as the transfer guy.
I feel. I mean, I'm a fan of Darwin Nunez. I think he's like a nice Stan Collymore. Stan Collymore was sort of mercurial. He could be brilliant. He could infuriate. But at the end of the day, Stan was just a bit of a tit. No offence, Stan, but he was, and he didn't put it in. Whereas the reason it's shocking that Darwin looked slack again, to the naked eye slack against was it Wolves and Villa, is because you're not used to seeing that Darwin this season. He may not be getting the goals, but you've seen him run around, close people down. The manager's words do feel there's a subtext of ruthlessness that Neil's hinted at in that, which is, we need them all at their best. We may need this bomb. Yeah, the manager's thinking, if I'm being cynical. This is the same
day that he said that Mo Salah is the standard for Liverpool, and like you should all be like Mo Salah as well. So
it might be that we've won the league last day of the season. If Darwin falls into Slot's arms, next day he phones the manager, goes, "What are the plans for next season?" He goes, "Sling your hook, Darwin. You're out of it. It's got, but boss, no, it's gone. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You used me. Well, I'm afraid that is where we are.
That's the whole of football.
That is the whole of football, and everyone's using everyone. That's in the right sense. Darwin Nunez would like to walk out of Liverpool a champion. Say he played his part. And if we have just got these 3 strange years to remember him by, I think we will more, as time goes by, remember him more fondly. And I can't help but feel when he leaves us, he will go on to not to better things, but he will have more opportunities to show what he can do. I feel from very early on in his career, Klopp and now his current manager, Arne, don't quite get him. And I don't mean as a personality. I mean his strengths and assets. Back at Benfica, they realised that he worked best in a 2. And the reason they did that is they realised he's best attacking from a wider position. His top period for Liverpool was under Klopp, when Firmino was playing central and he was playing wide. I think he had a great game, if memory serves, at Tottenham, where he played wide left, Bobby Firmino in his usual false 9, Salah was on the right. I don't know, he scored. But
always played well in a 2 with Jota.
Played well in his 2 with Jota. He played very well when Salah was out the team for a period. He played very well with Salah for a period last season. Somebody will harness him. Now, that's not to sort of absolve him of the responsibility. He does have to dig deep. He is a very emotional character. We were joking before we came on about his reaction after City. It suggests that he's had a good reaction to the manager's words, because he was very much part of the group. He was celebrating like he'd personally been involved, and it was reminiscent of how he was after the League Cup final. But he blows hot and cold, After another bad experience, he can be the guy on social media is taking all his LFC livery off his bio and things like that, and you go, what's going on here, Darwin? So let's see. It'd be interesting. What is the manager going to do with him in the immediate future? He didn't give him a single second against City. Is this all building towards him maybe starting today to give people fresh legs? I don't know. Or does he just think he's going to need fresh legs in the last 30, come what may?
The other thing that's happened is that supposedly at post-Villa, going into the City game, Jota said he didn't feel right. Jota doesn't feature at all against City either, and Jota supposedly, there's a little quote that the manager said post-match, which was Jota wasn't sure about his own recovery, so we need to look after that. Yeah. I'm going to keep coming back to this idea that Jota's had a chest injury. It's, how Jota feels is actually part of this, what's going on internally. It's not like he's had a calf strain. It's something a little bit different, and I think there's been games...
breathing,
yeah, I think it's breathing, and I think there's been a couple of games where Jota has just looked to me like he's not quite at the races, and then sometimes he comes off the bench and he looks like a monster. He looks that good from nowhere, and it doesn't quite make logical sense, not least because the other way in which I perceive Jota, maybe incorrectly, but is as a massively consistent player. I'm not used to seeing significant inconsistencies in Jota's level, but there has been them, I think, since he's come back, and that makes me think that maybe something isn't quite right. So the manager needs someone. And so he's, as part of this, he's got to look at Darwin. I think going into the summer, I think the biggest part of it will be whether or not Liverpool get the fee they want. I think that'll be the case for 3 or maybe even 4 of the attackers in the end. And that's not to say that 4 of the attackers will go. I don't think that. I just think that Liverpool may well go into the summer with the idea of, we're quite relaxed around, and we still don't know about Salah, but let's just say Salah's staying hypothetically. We're quite relaxed around moving 4 of these lads on. And the price is this, and we know the way Liverpool negotiate, it is that the price is this, and you either pay it or we'll keep the player. And Nunez has still got 3 more years after this summer. So I think it will be very easy to act as though there is no way now Nunez will play for Liverpool next season. I think it's unlikely he plays for Liverpool next season. But if anyone tries to lowball Liverpool off the back of this kerfuffle, they're just going to get a big no. And the reason why it isn't just this deal, but it's Liverpool's attitude towards all future deals. Liverpool got the fee they wanted for Sepp Vandenberg because they spent the whole summer going, no, sorry, he's worth that much. You're going to pay it or you're not going to get him. Liverpool got the fee they wanted for Carvalho. Same thing applied. Yep. He's worth that much and you're paying it or you're not getting him. And if you look back through Liverpool's negotiating history across the last 8-9 years, a lot of what Liverpool do 2 things. One is they'll say, we're happy to let players go on a free. And 2, they'll say, you'll pay the money or you're not getting the player. It's as simple as that. So I think with Nunez this summer, I think we can say we don't expect him to still be here. I don't. But unless someone actually stumps up the cash, and by the way, John Duran has gone to Saudi Arabia for over 60 million.
Yeah.
And Liverpool will look at that as a benchmark.
There's rumours that was a bid for Nunez as well, sort of similar.
And Liverpool will look at that as a benchmarking thing. Yep. And the attitude will be, if you don't pay it, we'll keep him. And then Arne Slot, who has made the point all the way through, he's head coach, not manager, he might not like it, but Arne Slot might just have to put up with it because that is what Liverpool do.
I think what will determine who goes and who stays in the summer is degree of business. You can build cases around quite a lot of the front line, around Chiesa, Jota's fitness, Nunez, Diaz and flirting with Barcelona endlessly. So there's 4 of them you can make strong cases about. And then there's Mo Salah, who we don't know if he's going to sign a contract or not. But I think in their planning, and that's key, my gut feel is they will be banking on bringing in 2 who they've thoroughly researched, scouted, ticked all their boxes in theory, and we're bringing these 2 in. And
2 forwards in.
2 forwards in. 2 forwards in. Forget the rest of the team. Yeah. 2 quality forwards, not more. Because more, you're giving yourself far too much to do. And then it'll be a case of who are the first 2 we can reasonably get rid of. So it might be Chiesa and it might be Diaz. It might be Jota and it might be Nunez. I don't know. But I think that's how it'll play out. So I totally agree with Neil. I think people thinking you're seeing the death throes of Nunez, you can't say just yet.
Yeah, well, Rob has teased the idea there may be some Darwin Nunez involvement tonight, I should say. We'll see whether Neil thinks he is right, though. But first, thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Get our exclusive NordVPN deal at https://nordvpn.com/TAW. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you go for the 2-year plan, you'll get 6 months for free to browse the internet with that extra peace of mind and the ability to change your virtual location so you can access geo-locked content, which can allegedly be used for things like Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs.
We've got 2 chaps in from Washington, and that they were just saying before about the joy they get of watching football, but it kicks off at 3 p.m. in the United Kingdom. They're just sat here right now. They live in the promised land, my friends.
Absolutely, do live in the promised land.
But maybe you can virtually live in the promised land. Who knows? Who's to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's to say?
And if you live in the promised land of Australia, we are coming to you. We are coming to you in March. Go to theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live. If you live in Perth or Adelaide or somewhere in the surrounding areas, and come watch me and Neil be as silly as this on stage. Neil, forget the Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs for now. Wednesday 8:15 tonight. Don't get caught out by that boy. 8:15 UK time. The biggest.
How are you going to get caught out being there too early? That's not bad then.
Yeah, true.
What time are you going to be in, Rob? 5:15.
I don't want to know about 8:15. I'm still working on 8 o'clock time.
Just in case you go to watch this at 7:30, you're like, oh, it's not on tonight. We must be on another night. That's how you can get caught out. The biggest game in Liverpool Football Club's history. Neil Atkinson.
It's an enormous game. I mean, I can't. If you go in tonight, what I would say is, listen, the next home game is against Southampton. It's at 3 p.m. and we know that it's going to be a little bit pedestrian because it's at 3 p.m. against Southampton, because we know that that's just the way football works. But then the next league home game after that, sorry, I should have said a league game because then there's PSG at home. The next league home game after that's Everton and the Merseyside derby. And we know it's going to be a night game and it's going to be absolutely mad. I think tonight is potentially an enormous game. We've had a couple of these midweek ones, I think, in recent history where it goes a bit weird. People get a bit anxious because of what's happened the weekend before. Forget your anxiety, leave your anxiety at the door. The manager's not going to be on the touchline, and I think it's very much everyone's job to enjoy this as much as possible. So if you're listening to this now, you go in tonight, tell your mates, we're all in tonight, all in from minute one, because I think it's the most important thing. I think if Liverpool start this game well, there's every chance Newcastle just go, you know what, let's just forget this one, write it off as a bad job, don't give too much away for the League Cup final, see you later on, let them have this, and we want the League Cup final. That's a bigger game for us, and we'll worry about that later. They're a side who in the last Premier League away game got beat 4-0, shipped 3 first half goals, Newcastle. They know what they're susceptible to, and I think if the crowd is absolutely on fire tonight, which I think it will be, I only give a fuck what's happening in the Arsenal game if Arsenal are getting beat. If they're drawing or losing or winning at half time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, because they might go and get a goal second half. That can't impact us. The extent to which we hold this thing in our hands now, and our job across 7 home games is to get it across the line. But arguably, almost the most important one is tonight, to reinforce the advantage and go from there. And without the manager being available to us on the sidelines, I just think it's a huge one for all of us to just get stuck in. Really, it's an all-in job tonight for me, this, from everyone, and I include the players in that, obviously, and the players set the tone. But I think if everyone sets the right tone tonight, I just don't see how we don't walk out with 3 points.
Absolutely, it feels like one of those sort of huge ones, Robin, and there's it's almost been bottlenecked, I think, a little bit because of the lack of a fixture at the weekend. Like it feels like one of those tonight where Liverpool players and the manager can certainly sort of cut loose in terms of his team selection. What are you expecting in terms of selection for tonight?
I mean, it's a tricky one. It's the 5th game in a sequence of 5, which was always going to test bodies and mind, but with the caveat that there's that full week to the next game in Paris. Yep. I mean, after tonight, I'd let them fly to Paris straight away and let Ibu Konate show them around the pubs and clubs of Paris and do a full Brian Clough, let them drink wine every night and just rock up at PSG and blow them off the pitch. Something like that.
Modern football, eh?
Modern football, eh? But there's a part of me that thinks, I'm totally behind Neil's rallying cry, but there's a part of me that would take 1-0 and no injuries here rather than
You still need the rallying cry. Go 1-0 on the first minute.
Sure, yeah.
89 minutes of sheer hell to follow.
I do think the manager would say ignore the Arsenal game. I do think it's interesting if they're leading 1 or 2 at the point we kick off, because I think, and it can work both ways, I think it can be a salutary reminder that nothing's done and focus minds.
Yeah.
Because I do think they're up against a challenge. There was such a sense of triumphalism after that City game that it's very hard to escape the possibility of a complacency. The players can tell themselves all the stories they like. If we all felt like we're watching the champions, they must feel like champions. Now, okay, they're paid to be more professional than us. The manager's paid to keep them in a certain way. I do think, in a sense, Arsenal winning could keep us more honest. It might ratchet up the pressure. It might make the crowd a bit more nervous. I don't know, but I do think it could have an effect. But anyway, your question was about the team itself. Yeah. He's got to be mindful of running people into the ground. Those who are nearing the red zone or in it already. Trent, because he's had muscle injuries in recent times, and he played himself into a red zone injury last season and got a recurring one.
Feet after City as well. Yeah.
So Conor Bradley not being available is not good. Joe Gomez not being available is not good. So he'll have an eye on that one, and he might. Last encounter with Newcastle, Quansah came in at right back for this very reason. Got 60, and Trent came on and was a very, very good substitute. I think he might flip that tonight. I think he might pre-program that Quansah will replace Trent. Left back, I don't know. Andy Robbo put in a shift for freshness' sake. You should put Tsimikas in. The centre halves, I don't think there's any messing with them. People are talking about whether Dom Szoboszlai misses out because he lay on his back at the end of the match. I don't think there's a chance in hell. I still think he's fitter than any of them out there, and I think he'll go again. He may again pull him on 60 if the match is in a good position. One of the midfielders is going to come out though, because he's not going to play 4-4-2 again. So, if you want, I just don't know. I didn't think Cody Gakpo looked his freshest when he came on. I do wonder. It's really hard to call. He could just go slot his small C conservative often enough, and it pays dividends. So he could just go, fuck it, I've got my favoured front three, which is Gakpo, Diaz and Salah. They're just going to play now. Or he could go, I want to see if my words have had some effect on Nunez, and he has been hinting at this. And Diaz stays in his favoured left position, and we see the Diaz Nunez Salah thing. I've got a sneaky feeling one of the midfielders might be rested, and I don't think it'll be Gravenberch. I could see Jones continuing and McAllister being brought from the bench. I'm not sure. Those are the variables.
I think the likeliest is that I think Jones continues and McAllister comes from the bench. I think it might suit the game anyway.
Good.
I think
Jones. Black Eye's almost given him a bit of a gimme with that.
Sort of, but I think that Jones is I think Jones was also Liverpool's best midfielder against Newcastle in the fixture at St James's Park.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think you have to start Trent. I think if he didn't start Trent, I'd start Jones at right back. I think that what
against
kills us,
Anthony Gordon.
Yep, I think what kills us in the game at their place was that we basically had no passing option down the right hand flank, and I would rather press. I'd start Szoboszlai before I'd start Quansah at right back. I would rather press a footballer, a proper ball-playing player into service on that side, because we just had no outball. And that's not me sort of slaughtering Quansah. I'm absolutely fine in a universe where Liverpool are a couple of goals clear in Rob's one, hopefully, with 20-30 to go, to then drop Quansah in for Trent and say, right, we're just managing this out now and going from there. But you've got to be able to play football against Tonali and Guimaraes. They won't have Joe Linton, thankfully, but Miley's looked good for them. Joe Willock loves to get on people's backs. They're so physically imposing. And what you can say, if you're physically imposing, you want your players to be physically imposing, but arguably what's as important is the touch. Is the idea of everyone being relaxed with the shape, the style of play, the touch, and being able to move the ball quickly. So I just don't think you want any passengers. Robertson will start. He comes off at the weekend, and I think the other thing is, I think he's almost for these 5 games. I think the challenge that comes after this, when you get into the PSV, Southampton, PSV League Cup thing, I think that's a different challenge to this. I think he's almost built his gang for this run of games, and I think why he's so annoyed with Nunez is actually because I think he had Nunez in the gang, and Nunez has knocked himself out of the gang, and he's not been happy about that. I think he's gone, these are the boys that I like and trust. This is how I'm using all of them. And I think Endo's a part of that as well. Yeah. I will use you as a closer out in games.
I think there's a cautionary tale, though, from the last time we faced almost exactly this scenario. It ended at Newcastle. The symmetry is too obvious. And they clearly looked like they'd run out of legs compared to Newcastle's abundant legs. And Gravenberch, for example, suffered. And
I think they'll know that, but I think they'll already have baked that in. And it might almost be, lads, this is the last time this happened. It doesn't happen this time.
We have got our crowd,
and this is the way we're going. And it's on our pitch. And also, it's worth saying that they were poor first 30. They'd just begun to see Newcastle off, and then Isak lashes at top corner. And by the way, I don't think that goes in against the first choice keeper, but Isak lashes at top corner at that point in time, and it goes 1-0 Newcastle, and suddenly that whole half feels like, it was inevitable that Newcastle. Well, it wasn't. Liverpool were on a path to getting in 0-0 at that point, and then it might have been a bit different, and then he could have made his subs in there. And second half, we are the better side, is the other thing to point out. So there's all the chat about legs, but second half, we finished stronger. Yeah. They were out on their feet by 80, 85. So I think that's worth bearing in mind as well. It's not quite as clear-cut as that. But I think the home crowd is absolutely massive. I think the feeling of being able to ride the game out when you need to is huge. I think the adrenaline that they can be given early on is absolutely significant. And I think within there, I think he should start a centre forwards. I don't think he should start Diaz up there, not least because if he starts Gakpo, he wants Diaz as a sub to come on for him in that position. If he starts Diaz, he'll want to bring Gakpo on as a sub at some point. He's picking Diaz ahead of Gakpo. So I think he should start Jota or Nunez. Then he's got Salah. I think you definitely start Szoboszlai. I think Jones. Then I think Gravenberch. And I think it's just a championship winning back four. The back four who've been there, seen it and done it. I mean, Konate doesn't quite count in that, but you take me point with the goalkeeper, and I think you do that. And to Rob's point before about complacency and champions and all of that, I think it's important they feel like they took a massive step forward. But I think these players know enough about what that means. We've seen enough of these senior players go through this before that you've got to keep going. They were the most you've got to keep going champions that ever were in 2019-20. Yeah. No one ever kept going like that.
Oh, yeah, that's very sure. I mean, the amount of blinkers you had to put on. I mean, even as fans, we're 18 points clear, and we were contriving scenarios where we could blow it still, so keep winning.
Yeah, the last league game before the pandemic, I was thinking about it this morning, thinking about the Australia shows actually, but the last league game before the pandemic, James Milner sprints 18 yards to clear it off the line so Bournemouth don't make it 2-2 with 35 minutes to go. Lesser mortals left that go in and says, lads, let's go up the other end and make it 3-2, but not James Milner. James Milner breaks his neck to go and kick it off the line, and that spirit's still there, I think. And now I think they know what they've got, they know how precious it is, they were that certain. I just think we're all in it together tonight in a big way. I'm so excited, honestly. I might go in as early as Rob.
We're all going to be heading in there early. The biggest game in Liverpool Football Club's history, don't you forget it. 8:15pm kickoff, don't you forget it. The Anfield Wrap, NordVPN, the champions elect, don't you forget it.
Bring your digital life to a whole new level with NordVPN. Choose the fastest VPN on the planet and explore the internet without interruption.